The style, the spirit, the swag. On the outside, the look of the Pachuco is vibrant and eye-catching with colorful zoot suits, chic accessories, and confident attitudes. But beneath the surface is a rich story of deep culture and the tale of people brave enough to resist and rise above. This Hispanic and Latin American Heritage Month, we tell the legend of the Pachuco through the eyes of some of their own.
You can't just put on a zoot suit and say, I'm a Pachuco. It's the attitude that it comes with, the responsibility. It is also who you become when you put on a zoot suit.
People will say it's empowering. It's to represent my people. It's to represent what this means, you know. La rebelión, right? Existimos porque resistimos. And I feel that the story plays just as much back then as it does now. My name is Luis Carlos Garcia. I'm born and raised out of Dallas, Texas. Pops, it was always English, and then Mom, it was always Spanish. Very Mexican growing up. Texas was definitely very different in their schooling. There was no Chicano history course or anything like that. As far as the history goes, it was very washed. I never really heard about Pachucos growing up. I just wish that I would have found out about it sooner in my life, you know? Discovering our own history can be difficult, and I'm glad that there are people that do push it out.
My name is Vanessa Estrella, and I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. I did not hear about zoot suits until I met my husband. I read about his family business, and my mother-in-law started the zoot suit. My father-in-law, when we first started the business, wanted to educate people about the zoot suit because it was a part of LA. It is a part of California history. We can't forget what happened in the past. We can't.
The Mexican Revolution was a huge upheaval in Mexico. 1 million people were killed, and there was 1 million refugees. Even though there was Mexicans already here, a lot of the refugees ended up becoming the first barrios, especially in LA, Texas, Arizona, around the Southwest. And as you know, there was a lot of racial animosity. In Texas in particular, there was massacres, killings, lynching.
They come for the chopping, come for the picking, come by the thousands.
The Bracero program brought a lot of us over here because people were fighting in the war. People didn't like that. They said we were taking their job.
Daniel Orozco!
Discrimination went crazy. The restrictive covenants, you couldn't live in certain places. The segregation in schools. So youth, especially in LA, some of them just decided to just resist. The big thing that really developed the resistance in the streets was the Pachuco culture. The Pachucos started as resistance to assimilation, to racial discrimination. They were taking the zoot suit from Harlem, came out of the jazz clubs, and there were these really very stylized clothing. And the Mexicans made it more garish.
It wasn't made popular here in California until the Pachuco came around. That's how they wanted to represent themselves. A zoot suit is defined by big shoulders, big lapels. It is an exaggerated suit. Women also wore the zoot suit. They also rocked it. I mean, it was, you know, again, a form of rebellion, a form of, I'm not gonna wear a skirt. I can wear pants too. One thing is putting on the suit, but once you add the accessories, it kind of completely changes the look. You have your skinny belts, you have the chain. A lot of people wore a necklace because it signified, you know, their religious beliefs. The hat. How do you not wear a hat? And then how do you not wear a feather? It wasn't just the suit, it represented something.
The zoot suit was meant to stand out because even though we weren't allowed in the places, they were still gonna see us. They're gonna hear me as I'm out here walking.
In the 1940s, when World War II was happening, there was the fabric shortage, and people were telling them to ration fabric.
The news at the time was that the Pachucos were undermining the war effort by using wool more.
These kids are being rebellious. They're being un-American because they're not following the law, and they're still using big baggy clothes. A lot of these young kids were wearing their brothers' suits, their dad's suits. And where were their brothers and dads that they were able to wear these suits? They were out at war. They were fighting for this great country.
It was just being used to be anti-Mexican, anti-Chicano, anti-Pachuco at a time when the racism was very strong and people could believe it. The LA area became the biggest builders of Liberty ships. So a lot of sailors were stationed here. They would go out on weekends or whenever they had a break to go party. Where are you going to go? Downtown LA. It was June 1943. Downtown LA was, at the time, Chicano town. And of course there was Pachucos among them. They would come to these brown communities as sailors, and then they started wanting to mess with the girls. And they would have fights. The media at the time was kind of pushing them. They were talking about these gangsters, these Aztec-blooded, bloodthirsty people. Then other white people joined them. Oh, our sailors are being attacked by Pachucos, which really wasn't the case.
Bunch of military members, Army, Marine Corps, Navy, ended up getting taxied in and going into downtown and just beating up Mexican Americans.
And the police pretty much supported them. But they were also beating up blacks and Filipinos, whoever had zoot suits. Most of them were Chicanos.
You see brown kids, literally is what they were, 13, 14, teenagers, stripped, almost naked, right down to their underwear, and beaten and demoralized, really. It went on for about a week, and there was no military that was locked up.
So it was riots by white people against Mexicans. Even though the U.S. government came in, pretty much stopped the rioting and the sailors from going amok, the LA city itself went crazy to arrest Pachucos, put them away.
So what happens when police starts arresting people for wearing zoot suits? Everybody in the community says, hey, zoot suits are illegal, you can't wear them. And then it spread like wildfire. You can't wear zoot suits in LA.
Cultural erasement, I think, has been what they've been trying to impose from the start. I joined the Marine Corps at 18. It definitely made me into the man that I am today. I did 2 tours. I was in during the Obama push, where I was in Afghanistan. I have a memory of Afghanistan for every calendar day. When you're in it, you're not thinking about anything, because you're always pushing forward. But then getting out, and when things slow down, that's when it all hits you. Civilian life happened. It was very different. I didn't dress like this before. I didn't know about my history or my culture. I was lost. I was down, especially as a veteran with PTSD. It took over a decade to overcome all that. It took over a decade for them to take the shrapnel out of my leg. And since then, I've been using dance as a therapy. That's when I had the zoot suit for the first time. And then after that is when I started diving into the history of it. To hear that people that looked like me were also mistreated just because they looked like me or because we're different was upsetting. We're no less American than anybody else. I mean, my blood is on those red stripes on the flag. I feel like I'm uncovering things that have been buried, and a lot of them have been buried on purpose. We have to show that we're still here.
Phyllis taught me every single thing I know about the culture, about the traditions. Growing up, she always saw or thought of Pachucos with a bad connotation because that's what everybody always told her. But then she saw the zoot suit and she thought, man, I really like that suit. She went so many different places and she couldn't find a zoot suit. And so she said, I'm gonna start a zoot suit business. I know if I want one, somebody else does too. She was able to find a tailor that was from Mexico that was able to say, hey, I can make them for you. We were the only store that made and carried the 1940 style zoot suit. She named the store El Pachuco because she figured if I name my store El Pachuco, it'll bring positivity to the name. And she was able to do that. She was able to make that happen. We have so many people that come in to the store through those doors and say, you know, my grandfather was a Pachuco, my great-grandfather was a Pachuco. This is a tradition for us. Believe it or not, I've had customers who come into the store and they're elderly already, and they said, you know, you made my wish a reality. I've always wanted a zoot suit, and this is what I'm gonna get buried in. I'm not kidding you. It makes me feel like we're doing something important here because we're continuing the tradition, we're continuing the legacy.
Today we gather to honor the resilience of previous generations that endured violence and to formally apologize for the sanctioned brutality that targeted not just Mexican Americans, but also African Americans and Filipinos and others 80 years ago. Today is our day of reckoning with this history and to talk about what took place during the Zoot Suit riots.
So City Hall made an apology last year. They're saying, we as City Council members represent the city of LA, and we know we were wrong. It was prejudicial, it was racism, and it should have never happened.
¡Que vivan los Pachucos!
This was the first year where we celebrated, you know, honoring the people that were a part of the Zoot Suit riots. We all cruised through the bridge. The police was so nice and generous. They were able to close down 6th Street Bridge. I don't think it's ever been done before. We drove all through downtown LA. It was the most beautiful thing, and we ended on Broadway Boulevard.
Seeing other Pachucos on the scene is always nice. It's always welcoming because you see your kind. There's a lot of togetherness, unity behind it.
We have more and more people wearing zoot suits today. It definitely gives you a sense of power to know that you can walk down the streets, you can wear a zoot suit and nothing's gonna happen to you. But you have to thank all the people that were able to pave the way for you to be able to do that today. Our new generation has to learn what happened in the past so that it doesn't repeat itself.
Such a rich heritage there.